Hello, Anna.
Hi, Geraldo. Very nice to see you again.
Yes, very nice. And we are here in this series. We have at the 4D community, dreamers, doers, designers, and doubters that you are part of, right? And
Yeah.
that's called, what is the Metacrisis for you? And the
Yeah.
reason we have this, and I think it's so important because this is a big word, right? Metacrisis, sometimes called polycrisis, if you take the term used by World Economic Forum, or sixth extinction. I mean, a lot of things that I believe try to capture that there is something about the world today that we need to understand better. It's this stomach feeling that so much going on, so many crises, so to say.
Uh-huh.
And people see it differently, but we are really interested on the personal perspective. So we had as examples Gaspar Vosa, that believes that sometimes we should not talk so much about crisis, but he's an innovator. So that's where he comes from. So why not see this as actually a meta opportunity for us
Yeah.
today? We have had Henry Mintzberg, that our dear professor, and he is so engaged with his work on rebalancing society. Maybe another term the need, according to him, to rebalance society, the importance of the plural sector, and so on. And today you have you, Anna, assistant professor at VU Amsterdam,
Yeah, correct. Yeah.
mother of two,
Two sons.
living in Europe and in the context of history we have today. So it would be so interesting, not only that we focus on the academic part, and I have so many questions to you, both in this area, but also as a mother, and again, live in Europe and in this period in history. So why don't start so we have the listeners here understand better where you come from, who you are as a person and your career.
Right.
Or who are you?
Okay. My name is Anna Plotnikova, and I'm originally from Russia, but currently I'm living in the Netherlands. And I'm living here for quite a while, just to kind of also give a bit of understanding that I quite well integrated. I speak Dutch. But in the meantime, I also had an opportunity to live in UK and also in Sweden. So I had a bit of international experiences to compare different contexts. I'm working as you said already, as an assistant professor within wide university, meaning that there are many faculties and there are very diverse research areas which we are working on as a university. But my personal focus is on strategy, and specifically on open strategy. So how can we involve people beyond the top management into the development of strategy? And I'm also recently started to move on also into the idea of how to bring diversity into strategy, how to bring different voices, also voices of marginalized actors, and what we do not see within the existing structures of strategy making. And last but certainly not least, I'm also a parent. I have two sons. My oldest son is 4 and my youngest is 1. And to be honest, at this stage of life, I consider this my primarily identity. So I'm a mom first and then all the other things. Because it takes so much of my attention, so much of my thinking, and probably some of the topics we will discuss today will also kind of be linked to being a parent.
Can you sleep well at nights with a kid 1 year old?
I'm really afraid to jinx it, but the last 3 nights he slept through. For the first time in 14 months, he started sleeping through. But I don't know if I'm afraid to say it because usually if you say something like that, the next night is going just wrong. So I hope it's the beginning of something, but I don't want to really, as I said, spoil it. So yeah, I'm still craving for good sleep. Let's put it this way.
Nice.
And so you asked what is the Metacrisis, and yeah, that's the conversation we wanted to have
and I
today.
mean, when we discussed that, I mean, maybe to start with, is it even something that is discussed, let's say, in the academic world? I mean, polycrisis or in strategy at all today?
I wouldn't say so. No, we don't actually have this term, and I have my thinking of why we don't do that. What we do speak, however, about is grand challenges and how to address the grand challenges and societal challenges through different ways of strategizing and so on. And I think the reason why we don't necessarily see that as a very important term, because we academics like to talk to a very small group of people. So we tend to divide ourselves in silos and communities where we speak the same language and understand each other. And of course, it's also, I mean, it has pragmatic reasons. We use certain theories, and of course, those theories have some boundary conditions, and that's what kind of bound us as well in how we think and how we discuss things. And so my community is a strategist practice community or open strategy community. We so far have not established a definition of this term, but I think probably it somehow creeps in through different terms.
Mm-hmm.
So
I have seen one presentation from Strategic Management Society, a webinar, where polycrisis. So I think polycrisis was in the World Economic Forum report from 2023. It was brought up as something about the environment that we should be aware of. But that is the only thing I saw myself.
yeah. Well, I don't know, maybe we are too slow to react. I mean, academia, we quite like to look at the data in the past to make some conclusions about today's world. So if the Metacrisis is something we've been speaking for the past year, probably the research about it comes in a few years time. So we might be just slow.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it's an interesting term. And to be honest, I struggle to define it myself because, as you said, it can mean so many things. It's not just one thing. But what stands out for me is that there's obviously some kind of crisis which has multiple interrelated crises. And depending on the lens you take and to look at it, I think you can identify different ways of seeing this crisis. So I was thinking about it, and I think my perspective onto this is a little bit more related to the information and how information is created, how information is perceived, and how it affects us as society, as communities, but also as individuals. So to me, Metacrisis is about creating those different kind of streams of information, which none of them are truth, actually. But you choose to join one or the other stream of information, which precludes you from seeing any other perspective. And that's where this misunderstanding and clashes created. And that's why it's so difficult to resolve, because it's almost impossible to create one united information stream.
Let me see if I understand, Anna. So you're bringing this with the polarization maybe that we are seeing in society, with so many types of information contradicting and in many ways so polarizing and as antagonists. Is that what you mean?
Yes, it's exactly what I mean. And I can kind of illustrate it from 3 different perspectives. So yeah, we can start from this polarization. And I mean, there is so many conflicts in the world as we speak right now. And it's very difficult to understand what's actually going on. And okay, I will try to draw on my personal experience. So me as a Russian person being outside of Russia, the discourse which I hear from within seem to be very unrealistic and non-truthful. However, when I speak to people who is there, who is inside, it's very difficult like for them to see what I see. And we almost cannot have a dialogue because we believe in so different things. But what is the most scary is that there is so many explanations for people out there for why things the way they are. And they are so convinced, and they can bring you thousands of arguments why you're wrong, so why I'm wrong and they are right. And it's impossible to have a conversation. So the information is shaped in such a way that it's very logical, it's very easy to believe, but it's also very different from what I know. So in a way, I even start doubting sometimes what do I know from the perspective where I am? Because of course I'm also choosing my information sources deliberately, and I also aware that they might be skewed in a way. So I don't know where is the truth. I don't know actually what to believe. The only thing I know, neither of them is actually 100% reliable. That's from that perspective. But then if you look into the, for instance, private life as a parent, you are constantly confronted with thousands of different opinions of what you should do as a parent, what is important to do, how to bring up your children in a correct way from physical point of view, like health-wise, but also from the mental point of view. And this creates so much pressure and so much almost like self-doubt that everything you do might be not right because there's other way to do it. So even as a parent, you struggle with all these information streams, and you really need to hear yourself and what you want to do as a parent, which is very difficult in all this noise of information. And then moving to the kind of third identity which I have, which is an academic, I also see that there is so much information streams coming through. And of course, there are academic research, but it's more about how do we present our academic research, because it seems that it's becoming much more important to be visible and loud rather than saying something valuable and somehow supported. So there is a lot of people who very regularly publish something, but not necessarily adding value with those publications. I don't mean necessarily academic publications, but more like being visible on social media with your research, like talking about yourself as an academic rather than about your research. And that's also kind of changing the game, which kind of academic you should be if you want to be a successful one.
This is so interesting because there is this term attention economy, right? One of the aspects you can say of the Metacrisis, I mean, the fact that we are, I think it was a Nobel Prize that first used the term attention economy, and which means that social media, which also, by the way, impacts what we believe or not, and we have fake news and so, but that attention economy, I was not aware that it was influencing even the academic world.
Well, certainly, because I think, yeah, we always struggle to divide our time, right? So sometimes you just pay attention to what is out there and close and easy to reach, rather than actually a deep search, searching for specific information. And even like opening simple LinkedIn sometimes can feel a bit I don't know, not authentic. So a lot of people publishing things about where they have been, what they have done, and how they traveled somewhere, which is absolutely cool, because I think that's the nice side, like a side of the academic world. But at the same time, it creates so much pressure on people who does not feel like necessarily talking about it or being able to do all of those things due to different reasons. Funding shortage, family situation, not everyone can suddenly leave the family and go somewhere for a few days, or some other constraints. So that also gives a pressure and makes life a little bit less enjoyable.
Very interesting. That this attention economy then is becoming pervasive in all levels of society.
Absolutely, yes. In a private life, in a professional life, in the political life, social life broadly. So yeah, and you have to be very careful with choosing your sources. But also I'm noticing more and more that I get so overwhelmed by all these streams of information, but at the same time almost incapable of shutting it down just to kind of to avoid any anything.
Yes.
And that's create quite a lot of anxiety because inevitably you anyway come across some news piece, especially again back from my home, and then you start worrying about everything what's happening, and that's like non-stop on the back of your mind. And to be honest, this conflict is already for more than 4 years, so it's quite draining on your mental health to constantly be worried of what happens.
Exactly. I'm thinking and reflecting a little bit in the 4D community. As you know, we use a lot of these terms that I think came from a paper, dark forest and the cozy web, right? The fact, let's say the cozy web is, let's say, the WhatsApp groups that we also have, and where you feel that you know the person behind, and you can handle things in a way that's more in a trustful manner, right, as a community, while you have the dark forest, which is the broader internet, and so, and the tensions in between, because at the same time, if you want to have some type of impact, you have to go out also to the dark forest and interact, right? But these tensions are very, very interesting, how we handle that. And especially, I'm thinking now, what you mentioned about information, some trends that I think for many, many years ago, I had difficulty to understand and really believe in that. But the idea that in the future we would lose the sense of truth.
I think we are there already.
We are there, exactly what I was saying. And we are there with all the, not only us as humans maybe, and in the search of exposition and so, but also thanks to AI and so much more that can be producing this dark forest that's becoming more and more, right? Which
Yeah.
means that we lose the sense of truth.
And
So,
yeah, and also your own truth. So it's almost impossible to develop your own thinking and your own thoughts, because quite often you refer to some, very concise information which you heard somewhere or seen somewhere for the lack of time. So you, especially if we're talking about social media, you get information through reels, which is very unreliable source of information, of course. But at the same time, it's so sticky to your brain that at some point it's become very difficult to distinguish, is it your own thinking or is it somebody else's idea which been put there? And that's something I'm struggle myself. I mean, I'm not saying that I'm able of distinguishing those two, but I'm very aware of what's happening, and not sure yet how to go about it, how to protect my own thinking and how to hear my own voice.
very interesting. So this is your perspective and what you want to lift as a particular area. So my question to you, in interaction with your students, if we stay in our academic part, how are you perceiving them? What do you think are the main concerns, and yes, what are you hearing from them, if anything?
Well, I think students are quite aware of information flows, let's put it this way, like that not all information is reliable, but quite often they anyway choose for the convenience. So in many times they still rely heavily on AI, which at the moment becoming harder and harder to pick. So before it was very obvious when students were using AI, because there's certain way of writing which you could spot on. Now it's become harder and harder to spot it because, of course, AI also develops. And what I'm trying to kind of convey to my students is basically, it's like if you go into the gym, you're trying to train a muscle. So, for instance, writing and thinking is a muscle, which maybe even the same muscle. Thinking, writing kind of comes through each other. So if you don't develop that muscle, you will not have it eventually in the future. And it is an effort to try. Well, I wouldn't say not use AI, but you need to find a way where you still develop your own way of thinking. And we struggle a lot, for instance, with specific type of assignments, written assignments, where it's very easy for students to just do something last moment. So they can just put a few ideas which they have in mind and then have a fully written chapter of their master thesis. And that's very concerning for us. And we searching for the ways how to deal with that. But I think every university actually struggling with the same challenge. So yeah, I think students are aware of that, and yet convenience wins.
But if we stay there, because this is a paradox for me, because I have been seeing a lot of these, how they say, videos about different speeches in how to say commitment speeches, where the graduation speech, so to say, where the speaker talks a little bit warm about AI and the possibilities, and they are booed by the students, right? So a very strong, how to say, reaction against AI. But what you're saying that while there is this phenomena, they also use AI a lot in their own work, because then it becomes a paradox, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. But I mean, students, I think, all over the times and the places geographically always optimize their workload. So although I had an interesting experience with one of the students who deliberately decided not to use AI, he upfront informed me about that. But I could see the drastic difference between his work and works of others. And it was two written essays, where one was more like a reflection report on his own learning, and another one was more kind of a blog, blog article. And in both cases, you could see how it was standing out negatively compared to other works. So yeah, it's a difficult choice to make, right? If you decide not to do it, and you know that you will, like, your level will be lower than the rest because majority of students will use it. So yeah.
If we look beyond the information and beyond AI, is there any other concerns or things popping in students' mind? I mean, this very confusing world that we have today, and with war, with so many crises, migration, forced migration, mental health issues, all the elements we have if we choose to use metacrisis or polycrisis. It's so many types of crisis. Are there concerns, other concerns about students, what choices of career, what they want to work, if they want to devote their lives for a content?
I think the newest generation of student is much more aware of all the grand challenges which we're facing. So they are willing actually to work on the questions which go beyond commercial value and maybe bring some more social value. And for instance, in my teaching, I'm teaching actually management consulting, which is a little bit well, I like teaching it because I believe that consulting is a place where very creative people can do big difference. But of course, if you only put it into commercial value, there might be some negative consequences to it. So to change it a little bit, I'm trying to bring the critical perspective to that. So how the consulting world operates and which kind of challenges are usually tackled and what are the connections between different stakeholders within the consulting industry. But also I'm trying to bring other type of consultants into the classroom. So for instance, more people who, for instance, having a technical background and somehow trying to link the business issues with technical issues. Or for instance, trying to bring consultants who are working for government. I mean, not the consultancy companies hired by government, but within the government, within Dutch government, for instance, there is a consultancy department which internally uses the services. So I think it's nice to see there are different types of consulting. Also consulting within education system. So different streams of consulting. and I see that there is more and more interest in these branches of the industry as well. And of course, there is still a core group of students who would be willing to work for Big Four or Big Three if we're talking about strategy. But it's also nice to see that there is much more diversity in types of challenges that students want to deal with. That's on the type of the challenges they willing to take on. And on the other end, what I also noticing in the teaching that students are much more aware of their mental health issues. And there have been quite an increasing amount of information I get as a teacher and requests I get as a teacher related to the mental health, which could be actually a positive thing, so that people actually recognize that and don't afraid to talk about it and actually bring it up, and it's becoming much less of a taboo topic. But again, it's something what we as educators kind of dealing with, and sometimes find it difficult, like what exactly should we do? And sometimes, where is the line where we should say no to certain requests and where it's still okay. So this is something, a new territory, let's put it this way.
Okay, another question. I wonder a little bit, let's see, if you think of the impact of companies when you're working with strategies, and you know that we worked at Ericsson once upon a time together when you were a student, right? You're doing your PhD. So a company like Ericsson is working with amazing things like connectivity, and we say limitless connectivity, which is wonderful. When I started at Ericsson, 85% of mankind never heard a dial tone. They didn't have an access of a telephony. We now we don't even have the dial tone, by the way. You don't need. But at the same time, it's connectivity that enables all the things we also see, like any technology, many times with social media, the disinformation that we discussed, and so, right? So this poses the questions of how companies connect with issues like today is very common to see companies working very actively with sustainability, their role in terms of climate change. I wonder if the same thing is becoming more prevalent in the discussions with the students or even in strategy, to rethink that maybe more of the same, more profits, more, growth, and all these things that we take for granted. That's the role of strategy, well, a company, right?
Yeah.
To rethink their role in society.
Oh, that's a very good question. And to be honest, I don't have this discussion that much with my students, but rather with my colleagues. So right now, we actually writing a couple of pieces where we're trying to bring this different perspective on strategy. So I already mentioned that there is some research which I'm trying to do on how to bring diversity into strategy. And also we're writing a kind of an opinion piece about how to bring relational ethics into the strategy. So the discussion basically start to, or at least I hope that I can join this conversation where we invite a little bit broader view on who actually is the strategist, and it goes beyond human. So, for instance, from the relational ethics perspective, we all creatures, not only human but also nature creatures, actually related, and our well-being is well connected. So the profit of organization is very much linked to the well-being of the nature from which they take the resources to produce whatever they do. But I don't think that these connections are they are so long-term that it's very difficult to make these links. Okay. And so what we're trying to actually to bring this idea that we need to think a little bit in these terms and don't expect that those relationships will last forever, because this disbalance between what we get from the more than human actors from the nature is not endless. And we actually need to consider this balance between all of the involved parties, so to say. So I definitely see that there is some positive response to these ideas from the co-authors, from the reviewers, from the editors. We didn't publish anything yet. We're in the process. So I hope that we can actually bring those ideas across. And once that's out, maybe we should actually have another podcast and talk about this topic very elaborately.
Let's do that, Anna, because as I think I mentioned before, the only, at least that I know, from Strategic Management Society, it was this webinar about the polycrisis. And what I found a little bit, how to say, to be honest, I'm going to say the word disappointed, was that when finally we were talking about polycrisis, then the message was things are going faster and faster, and the need for countries to think faster and faster, and then that maybe port and fight forces is not so current, and we need to think broadly. So all this is fine, but it's more of the same, not discussing that maybe companies and strategy have a role in helping or aggravating the actual crisis, right?
Yes.
So
And
let's.
yeah, it's nice that you actually mentioned it, because I think I elaborated a little bit on one stream of research, but this other stream of research where we're trying to bring diversity, I think also speaks a little bit to the problem you're pointing out. So what we actually try and also to say is that strategy also exists within quite a well-established structures. And those structures in which it exists, it's quite full of inequalities. And so by doing strategy the same way as we get used to, we actually neutralize those inequalities. We don't see them. We see everything what we do as norm, and we don't question this norm. And I think that's very much speaks to what you just said. It's not enough just doing strategy the same way and trying to make it maybe more accessible for broader set of actors. Because in the end of the day, system works in such a way that there are a privileged set of actors and there are those who are marginalized. And unless you start questioning the structures which are embedded within strategy making, you will not change the strategy making. But of course, it comes against the profit ideas. And I don't think, I don't know how we actually can change. I'm sure we can find a few cases in the real world, such as Patagonia, who actually do something more than just profit. So let's see how those ideas will land with the academic community, and then hopefully we can actually do empirical studies with the companies who hopefully pursue different logic, not only profit logic, but some other types of logic.
Very good. We leave a little bit now the academic world.
Okay.
And back to Anna as mother of 2 kids. What are your concerns, and how do you see and your kids, let's say, growing up in this world where we have more and more wars and populism and we don't know what the truth is, and social media. What are your concerns, and how do you see going forward? I mean,
it's a very very broad question. I mean, I have so many concerns about the world in which they're living, and I mean, will there be a world actually? I mean, some people threatening the world with some nuclear conflicts. So no, but I think what I'm concerned about is, first of all, their critical thinking, that they're actually able to separate opinion and different opinions and see where they're coming from, basically the root causes of those opinions. I'm also quite worried about the attention. I mean, we kind of speak a little bit about this attention economy, and everything what is designed for children now, I'm afraid, is very much competing for their attention, but not in a healthy way. So what I'm worried about is for them to develop the skill to actually control their attention. I don't have real tools for that yet. I'm still exploring what could help. But I think what I would really like them to be is to be able to concentrate on one thing for some time. Because unfortunately, I think there's been some research which demonstrate that, I mean, it's of course very broad research, and we can question the samples they did and geographical location and which research is done. But at the beginning of 2000s, I think on average, people were able to hold attention for 2.5 minutes. And right now we only able to do it for 47 seconds. And of course, that's a big problem for learning, because if we cannot concentrate, we cannot learn. If we cannot learn, which kind of critical thinking can we develop? And then, of course, there's also I learned that I become a little bit more feminist as as I grew up, and of course I have 2 sons. So for me, it's very important how they become. Well, look, I grew up in a very patriarchal society, and there is a lot of things which I do not like about this patriarchal society. And I really hope that they will not have those values and those, structures again, which are very common within the patriarchal society. I really want them to see the other sex or partner as equal. And that's another thing which I'm worried about. And I hope that I can somehow project this idea to them just simply by showing example, like together with their father, showing that you can be partners. I think that's the important example to have in their life. So, I mean, I already named like 3 or 4 concerns.
I love this is such a big question, and I'd love to hear your answers, and that you have already given such a thought, you know.
Yeah, I was actually like a little bit more on the spiritual side of things. I always dreamt of having a daughter, because I'm a daughter to my mom. We have a very nice relationship with her, and I always hoped that I will have something like that with my daughter. I was given 2 sons, so and I was thinking, why is that the case? Because I a little bit of a, like maybe fatalist, maybe stoic. I'm not sure how to explain it, but I'm like, okay, that's what given to me. This is like my reality now. What do we do with this, and what's the meaning of it? So I guess the meaning is actually to raise boys, which I would like to meet when I was younger, basically. So I would like to raise boys which are kind of like not with toxic masculinity, not with seeing female as some kind of secondary creature. Some people even call it creature, which, I mean, I'm translating from Russian, which is a little bit strange. And it also feels like there is another turn of this patriarchy back. I mean, we've been moving towards some inclusion and diversity and equality, and now it feels like there is some turn back to more conservative society, like back in time, which is a bit scary.
And I really enjoy, and I think it's so good that you already give us these thoughts, and I love to hear. I think if you just take one phenomena that, like me too, it's I think it's the 8th or 10th year anniversary, even if you have Me Too since much before, but you still see so many things happening, like from Epstein to Internet, right? So,
Yeah.
so we live in a society that I'm really thinking here of my other publication, as maybe playing the second half, and there I have seen many life stories about exactly this, of living a society that we have today, where men are, how to say, doing so many things that are so bad, and that needs, it's really an important area. So I wonder if you would like to say something about the fact of being Russia in Europe nowadays, if there is anything that in particular that you find?
Yeah, I think what is interesting, or maybe I'm lucky, I actually never ever so far have experienced any negative comments from any other people who I meet on my way. I think everyone understands that it's not necessarily choice of nationality to be in a situation in which we ended up now. Maybe it also helps that I'm quite well integrated. I speak Dutch language, so people do not see me as a foreigner as much as if I wouldn't have those skills. But I think what is very difficult is, in a moment when this special military operation, how Russian language name it, started, I felt like I completely lost any ground to stand. Because at the time, I didn't have yet my second citizenship. I did have my Russian citizenship, but I didn't feel that I belonged there anymore because I would never believe that something like that can happen. And I would never, it felt like you just want to hide and don't go outside because inevitably you will have to say where you're from. And then you're just afraid how people will react. That was quite a proper fear. But luckily, I never experienced any negative feelings towards myself. But what it does do to me, more not so much in a European context, but more the connection back with my home. So the family conversations, becoming very tense in the sense that there are certain topics we avoid to discuss. We just don't talk about it because we know that we look at things very differently. And that's very difficult because that kind of puts the wall between, within the family.
Okay.
And then I'm not sure if it's fortunate or not, but I'm the only one person who left Russia, and it happened quite a while ago. I moved away in 2013, so it's 13 years ago. And so I'm the only one who is living outside. But what also surprises me that my parents never actually, my parents, because they to me the most important people who left back in Russia, they never ask me what is my opinion. So they just have an internal belief that my opinion is equals to theirs. So they never actually tested. And I never openly said anything to them neither. And that creates some, distance between you. And that's quite difficult. And I'm sure that I'm not the only one in, being in this situation. And any talk, coming back to our information discussion, which we started with, it doesn't bring anything. It only brings irritation and very strong emotions, but it does not bring you closer to each other. And that's the problem. So you cannot really have a honest conversation because the information which you receive is so emotionally laden that there is no dialogue. It's becoming kind of two monologues.
And thank you for being so open about this. I can only think that is a very hard situation from that perspective. Yeah.
But linking to the other topic we discussed about children, I actually wonder to which degree how they will feel about being half Russians. I hope they will be proud because I think there's many other good things which Russia did in the past. But at the moment, it's also one of my concerns. Like, how does it affect their feelings and how does it affect their identity? A little bit maybe what makes life easier for them. They don't speak much Russian because I find it extremely difficult to be the only person who speaks Russian to them at home. I do as much as I can, and I think they understand it. But of course, the biggest part of their daily conversations happens in Dutch. So I'm not sure if it's a good thing that they kind of losing a little bit this part of the culture, or maybe they will want to catch up later. Maybe they want to learn it at some point of their life. We'll see. But that's another concern, which, to the other few, which I already shared with you before.
Very good. And we are approaching, we could continue for hours, but I'm thinking before we wrap up, anything that you feel like, no, but there are we are missing a specifically item that you would like to bring, and both in terms of concerns. We talked a lot about concerns, but also the opportunities, right?
Oh,
You see in this world, let's see, both as an academic, you today looking forward and what the areas and things that you want to do, and so, but also as a mother of two.
well, let's start from the academic life. I think I already shared about like my ideas on how to bring different perspectives into strategy. I would really love to see more empirical context on how things can be done differently. So really trying to dive deep into the organizations which show that you can also have different logic of your like existence as a company. That would be extremely amazing. And so I have many kind of ideas and plans of how we could do it. I mean, as academic community. So I hope that at some point they will come to fruition. So from this perspective, to give a little bit of a positive twist, despite all those negativity which happening in the world, quite often, or most of the time, we are all people, and people are genuinely nice to each other. I mean, there are of course exceptions, and there is of course not nice people, but overall, it's so reassuring every time within academia, but also within just the neighborhood, to come across people who really supportive and really, understanding. And so it's still there. So despite all the Metacrisis, I think we as a human quite resilient, and the community, that's where our strengths come from. And in term, with children, I think with all the concerns I named, I already named a few of kind of ideas I have on what I need to do. I will continue searching for the ways to increase their critical thinking and increase their attention span and opportunity to concentrate. I don't know if your listeners know something about this, or maybe have some experience. I would be very curious to hear. I'm not sure if you have a comment section where we could share some of the ideas on that, but that would be nice, actually, especially from people who maybe have a bit more of experience or more successful experiences in bringing up this type of qualities in their children.
Thanks so much. And I think there is so much happening as we speak, right? I think some countries are, for instance, even prohibiting the use of social media for children.
Yes.
Right?
I think it's actually, I like this trend. I think it's quite positive because it has lots of negative effects on youth. I experience it myself, so I can only imagine what does it do to the brain, which is still in the development phase.
Exactly. But I feel like me, we are both rational optimists in this world with so many issues, but there is so many opportunities out there. And
I totally agree with you. There are.
Good. Anna, thank you so much. I know that you're busy now with vacation soon, or?
Soon, yes, soon. I'm slowly approaching this. There's a few important deadlines, but hopefully soon I can disconnect for a little while.
Yes. So already now wishing them a really good summer vacation. And
thank you so much, Geraldo.
Thank you.
And thank you for the opportunity to share my thoughts. And I hope there is something useful in them, or at least it can start some conversation.
I'm completely sure about that. Let's continue the conversations.
Let's do that.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.